pre-Indian proverb, only when the last tree has died and the last river been poisoned and the last fish been caught will we realise that we can't eat money. What else can't money buy? Are there other currencies out there? What other things do we value in our lives beyond money and things that can be bought? And if we're thinking in terms of growth, maybe just going away from financial growth, what sort of growth might be good for us? A growth in our wisdom, a growth in our understanding of each other, our emotional intelligence, our connection to the energetic web of life, our understanding of compassion, those sorts of things are areas where there's necessary for growth. This is the diagram that Kate Raworth has come up with, and she talks about the importance of diagrams and equations and charts in learning economics. And with this particular one, she's saying that we mustn't, Tim has said to me, I can point a little, we mustn't fall into this area. None of us should be in this area of shortfall. We should be here, in this donut where it's offering us a safe haven, away from all of these planetary threats, chemical pollution, ocean acidification, air pollution, what's happening with our water supplies, so that there is a safe space. And that's what is amazing about this new system of economics, because it is actually taking into account us, the planet, our resources, and sort of all sorts of aspects of life. And this is from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is the circular economics. And as you can see, that's sort of sustainable as well. And that we are reusing and recycling, refurbishing things. And that all kind of started, consumerism was really, really promoted post-war by a guy called Edwin Bernays, who was the nephew of Freud. And I read that it was kind of like, how do we keep the masses happy? Oh, well, tell them to buy lots of things. And that's how that started. And now we're coming back into a time of reusing, refurbishing and recycling like we did during those war times. Also, is to think about renewable energy and eliminating the toxic chemicals out of our system and the waste, and using materials again and again. And I went to a talk the other day by Mary Roslin down at the Friends Meeting House, and she was talking about how many, many people around the world are feeling in a total state of despair, total state of being overwhelmed, feeling numb, hopeless, helpless, burnt out, paralysed, filled with rage about what's going on around the world. And what can we do? What can we do to make a contribution? And it really is very, very important, I think, that we actually feel that we as individuals can make a contribution, but we can probably make a bigger one if we gather together with people. So one of the groups that started in Hastings is the Hastings Doughnut Economics Action Group, and it uses the principles of Kate Raworth's book. And so if anybody is interested here and you're a Hastings person or a St Leonard's person and you'd like to join, it's all about alternative economics. And we're learning, and we're going to have events and maybe a conference, and try and get Kate Raworth to come down here. There's a lady who I met at the last meeting called Sherry Clark, and she's worked with the New Economics Foundation. And she says that what we should do is to make a personalised system for Hastings, specifically for Hastings and St Leonard's, and to value our unique selling points, such as being by the sea, and the fact that we could have solar, we could have wind, we could have tidal, and there's all that sort of potential here. And we have Energised Sussex Coast, we have local 1066 local energy, and all sorts of things, Transition Town Hastings that's going on to help us to make this transition to a better place. Competition, I've been thinking, I grew up in a time where it was just full-on competition at home, at school and at work, and I believe that collaboration and cooperation and collective action is a much, much better way forward. Kate Raworth talks about the language how that can also very, very much influence people, and whether we see ourselves as like a consumer or as a citizen, as a client, as a customer, and that language is very, very important to how we see ourselves, and to whether we see ourselves as somebody who can take the power and do things. So E is for energy as well. And so everything is energy, as we all know, and it can't be destroyed and it can't be transformed. And that means when we're looking back in our ancestry, our energy that makes us up goes right back to the beginning of time and what had happened before that. And that is such an amazing thought, that there's been 5 extinctions and we're all still here. And what lies in our future, and what can we do to make the future better? I put down a human form there, because if we are all energy, I wondered whether we should ask ourselves what sort of energy we're resonating, what's going on inside of us, and that we are collectively resonating. And also that we should really redirect our energy so that we're not just shaking our fists at the government and looking for people to blame, that we can take action ourselves. Because humans, we are just like a little hair's breadth since the beginning of the planet's existence. We're just a little pencil line, and yet we seem to have done a tremendous amount, and we've achieved some amazing things. So that's a little diagram of where we could all get together. Kate Raworth says that the conditions on our planet at the moment are absolutely perfect for our survival, and we can't take it for granted. It's absolutely in perfect balance, but it is a delicate balance. I have a friend who works in Frankfurt with satellites, and he observes the world, and he does say that it's not all down to us. He's been a Greenpeace person, he's been a Friends of the Earth person since we were at school together, and he says it's not all down to us. There's all sorts of other factors involved, all sorts of universal factors, atmospherics and things, but we could do better. And by investing in renewables, in thinking more sustainably, we could really make a difference. And also, I hear people talking a lot about saving the planet. I don't think we're saving the planet. I think that we're concerned about our own survival and extinction. I think the planet will carry on without us and life will go on, and we are just another species, although we tend to think that we are very, very important, I think, and possibly number one. Climate change, well, whether you believe it or not, I think that sustainable living just makes good common sense. I think that's rather a beautiful thing. That was on a march where he said, "For the love of her," and I think that's lovely. Isaac Asimov, the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. And I wonder how wise we are, because if we do see ourselves as stewards of the planet, how wisely are we stewarding what's happening around us? And this is a cartoon I did when I was working with the Bexhill Link Road against the Link Road. That sometimes I think we're above everything. I think we as humans, we think that we're better and above everything else on the planet, and that we're separate to nature, and I think we're very, very much part of it. I was imagining that if you, this is a vision for me. I do little collages and things, and I wondered how many of us would ever put onto a collage that what we want is pestilence and war and poverty and starvation and drought and pain and suffering. None of us would want that, but it is actually happening around the world at this time. So climate change is happening, just because it might not be happening in our lives specifically. This is another quote from John Fire Lane Deer, and he was a Sioux Lakota, and he was born in 1903. And he says, "Before our white brothers arrived to make us civilized men, we didn't have any kind of prison, and because of this we had no delinquents. Without a prison, there can be no delinquents. We had no locks nor keys, and therefore amongst us there were no thieves. When someone was so poor that he couldn't afford a horse, a tent or a blanket, he would in that case receive it all as a gift. We were too uncivilised to give great importance to private property. We didn't know any kind of money, and consequently the value of a human being was not determined by his wealth. We had no written laws laid down, no lawyers, no politicians, and therefore we were not able to cheat and swindle one another. We were really in bad shape before the white men arrived, and I don't know how to explain how we were able to manage without these fundamental things that, so they tell us, are so necessary for a civilised society. So I think this is, I write for Hastings Online Times and with Hastings Independent Press sometimes, which is great to live in a town with these independent newspapers. And this is Gerard Winstanley, who was one of the true levellers. Thoughts ran in me that words and writing were nothing and must die, for action is the essence of all, and if thou dost not act, thou dost nothing. And this is from Alice Walker. Activism is the rent I pay for living on this planet. And there are some amazing things going on in this town. People really committing hours and hours of their lives every day to developing a sustainable future for us all. And I must just tell you that there is a Sustainability on Sea week that's starting this Saturday with the Ocean Symposium, and it ends with a great big celebration day on the 30th of September. You can just search for Sustainability on Sea. It's organised by Transition Town Hastings and Energise Sussex Coast. And if we imagine that we can't do very much as just a small group of people, I find this fascinating. It's a word called apoptosis. And inside the chrysalis, post-caterpillar and pre-butterfly, there's lots and lots of cells, and the cells die, and these imaginal cells come into being. And although they're in the minority, they're the ones that cause the metamorphosis into the butterfly. And that's rather a beautiful thing, I think, to think of. And it would be great if we could all sort of see life in terms of our what we share, our common ground. That we all need water, we all need air, we all need food, we need each other, we all need love, we all need care. There's lots of shared ground that we have rather than seeing our differences. And all of our needs. Marshall Rosenberg, who's a non-violent communicator, mediator and negotiator, he has lists of needs that he's collected from workshops around the world, and he's found that this is what all humanity has in common. And it's just a beautiful thing, because to me this is a time where we don't need to be in competition with one another. We all have such brilliant knowledge and talents and skills and gifts, and we should be cooperating, not being against one another. I've just said love, not fear. My friends will know that that's something that I think a lot about love and what love means. And ever since I was a very, very young person, I had fear instilled in me. I was an only child, an only daughter, a very late arrival, and my mum and dad loved me very much, but they overprotected me, and they instilled fear in me everywhere I was going to go, that I was going to sort of die in all these various places around the world. It's amazing that I ever left home. But you know, the fear is perpetuated in the media constantly, and we must, I think, try very, very hard not to get drawn into it. The media is so powerful, and it doesn't have to be, because it's, we don't need to succumb to that side of things. So hope. I put this in because in Germany, when I lived in Germany, there was Sie sieht durch die Wolken die Sonne. She sees through the clouds the sun. And I think that that's lovely, that we all have a sense of hope. And because there is amazing talent and gifts and blessings within this town, and such great people doing amazing things with initiatives and entrepreneurism in the town. And I really feel that we could create an amazing, amazing future. So thank you.
Bavard, so thank you very much. Zelly, actually, I don't know if you know this, Julia, but I guess in a way from Zelly's talk, you've sort of embraced Doughnut economics by giving up everything. So, does anybody have any questions for Zelly? I'm going to call a bit closer because I can't, it's difficult to see. I think there's a hand. Yes, there's a hand.
First of all, thanks for inspiring some hope. I haven't yet read Doughnut Economics, but does that itself inspire hope? Is there a hopeful outcome of the book?
Yes, very, very much so. And what I find most impressive is all of the examples that she gives in her book of things that are actually happening now, where people are making a difference through engineering and technology, all sorts of things. And also, I just would like to say that there was a beautiful film called Doughnut, and Rob Hopkins, who started the Transition Town movement, appears in it just now and again. And he talks about climate change and a sense of doom and gloom that sometimes we can have, and how that we can feel real despair. And the man who is such a delightful, charming man, and he's just filled with joy on his face, because he says it doesn't have to be that way, it could be amazing. And that really, really reached my heart, that I thought, yes, it could be. I must think in terms of love, not fear. So thank you.
Fantastic. Any love, not fear, and hope. Any other questions for Zelly? Lydia has a question.
Hi Zelly, great to talk.
Thank you.
I was very interested, you mentioned growth at the beginning of the talk, because that's talked about a lot, isn't it, the growth in different countries?
Yes. What growth?
Yeah.
Yes.
And how that's so important, but I wonder whether if we had zero growth, is that just sustainability, you think?
To me, it's a seasonal thing. I think that we all have seasons, even within us. Not only women have seasons, but everybody has seasons, and that we have times of sowing seeds, times of harvest, times of reflection, and times of hibernation, and that actually constant growth isn't the way forward. And it's just we've been so educated, because when people actually go to school and universities, they are just taught the same systems. They're not necessarily taught alternative economic systems. And so therefore they are the economists of the future, and they are literally just saying, carrying on with the same system. But that is changing now, because lots of students are actually challenging their professors. Yes, I don't think constant growth is relevant to today's world.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Zelly? I know I've forgotten just about everything I learned at school, and you're going to see if I ever will. Yes, question here.
You talk about a world without, but no, you don't really, but a world without competition seems to be seen as a good thing in this kind of futuristic economy. I mean, the idea of a world without competition to me seems like that would be a world without discourse, without humour, without two boxers getting into a ring and comparing gloves and asking what they can do to help each other, and a world without competition seems like the dullest. I think I'll just kill myself now.
It's very, very interesting. And that's it, you see, there's space for everybody in the world, isn't there? For me, I couldn't go to a boxing match, because I know people in my personal life who do boxing, and I couldn't go and see them because I couldn't bear the violence.
Or cricket then?
So healthy competition is marvellous. I ghostwrote for a book for a guy called Ayman Sawaf and his wife, called Sacred Economics, and they had been business people since they were very, very young. And they said it was a hideous world. It was a dog-eat-dog, nasty world. And they wrote this book to try and bring in the principles of honour and chivalry into business. So I think healthy competition is brilliant. If I played you at Pictionary, I would be very competitive. But I do think that collaboration and cooperation is good as well.
I think maybe one of those comparing to our boxing matches. So I quite like the idea of that.
Oh, may I just say one thing? Gordon Brown earlier on in the week was talking about how we're heading towards another financial crisis unless we cooperate. So I don't think it's sort of like saying we should never ever compete with one another, but that we should maybe tip the balance towards cooperation and collaboration.
Any final questions for Zelly before we take another break? I can't see any hands unless no. In which case, can we please thank Zelly?
Thank you very much.